Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the commemoration, the 150th year commemoration of the Civil War, or the American War, Civil War, the war between the states, or the war for Southern independence, or whatever war you wish to use, or whatever word you wish to use in reference to this tragic event in American history between 1861 and 1865. Of course, we have to talk about this war a well-known historian and an individual who has made several contributions on this particular show dealing with this particular war, Dr. BLovett from Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Lovett, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Well, thank you, Dr. Haney. Yeah.
And to tell you, Dr. Lovett, that we did not exaggerate when we said that we've had you on many, many occasions talking about the Civil War specifically. But I think that if we look back into our archives, we find that we've had you dealing with the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, and on and on and on, in addition to several of your books that we've had an opportunity to review. But let's have you give our audience an opportunity to hear who you are and some of the information in reference to you, and then we'll get into some of the things dealing with the war.
I'm a native of Tennessee, born and raised and educated in Tennessee. Received my bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees from the University of Arkansas. And taught at Eureka College in Illinois, the alma mater of President Ronald Reagan, who attended there back in the 1930s. And came to Tennessee State University in 1973, and I've served several administrative positions, but for the last 10 years I've concentrated on my research, my students, and professor of history.
And so you've really been involved in history, and to talk about the Civil War is no event or celebration or to you in a real sense, because this is what you talk about all the time. And so let's give you an opportunity to say something about this war, Dr. Lovett.
All right. Well, this year, 2011, is the equivalent of 1861. So 150 years ago, the Civil War began, and Tennessee became involved in May, June of 1861. So it's the Sesquicentennial commemoration that the state of Tennessee is putting on over the next 4 years. There's a very large commission appointed by the governor to make sure that celebration is carried out across all parts of the state, and that all people, blacks, whites, Asians, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, women, children, are involved in learning more about the various aspects of the Civil War. Because Tennessee, only next to Virginia, is the second most important battlefield of the Civil War. And those two states, Tennessee and Virginia, right now are out front of other states in commemorating the American Civil War. It's been so long ago since we commemorated the war in 1964, when it was 100 years old. And so a couple of generations are not familiar with the information and the importance and the interpretations of the American Civil War. Believe it or not, people from England and France and parts of Europe are probably more familiar and more interested in the aspects of the American Civil War and the American Revolutionary War than many of our own children and many of us adults. So this is the year that we began to celebrate, well, not celebrate, but rather commemorate various aspects, the social aspects, the cultural aspects, as well as the military aspects of the American Civil War, both Confederate and Union side.
And I think that there were many earth-shaking events that occurred in that war, but I think one of the most important events was the African population. Why don't you say something in reference to the African population, the slave population during this period, and say something about slavery itself.
Yeah. Well, slavery was not at first the main issue, according to many of the southern states of the Civil War. But by 1860, 61, it was a major issue. In 1861, President Lincoln and Congress passed the first Confiscation Act. They passed another one in 1862 because the Confederates were making heavy use of slaves in their military, that is digging fortifications, they were herdsmen, and so on. And so they passed the Confiscation
Okay,
Act.
Doctor, let me take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very first break. Of the